India and China have been at each other's throat for a long time. The current standoff just adds another episode into the storyline of the peacock and the dragon. From 3,500 kilometers of no recognized border to the Sino Indian War of 1962 and skirmishes that followed in last decades, we discuss what keeps this region boiling and what repercussions lie ahead. The ongoing Indo-China standoff and its current trajectory is based on the reports coming in Indian media.
On what's happening as far as the Ladakh standoff between the two armies are concerned. We showed you the Chinese mobilization near the line of actual control.
Of Indian and Chinese soldiers have been engaged in a tense face-off along the India-China border.
Our top focus story on the broadcast: an intense face-off between troops of India and China.
The most volatile situation India has seen since the Kargil war got over.
Surprisingly, since the third week of April, the Chinese have been doing incursions at 5 places, starting from Nakula in Sikkim, Pagong Lake in eastern Ladakh, and along Galabon River Valley in the north. One thing to understand is that there is no marked line, it's just a perception. Chinese came up to their declared line of actual control in 1962 war, where they routed the Indian army. In order to understand the complicated matrix of Indo-China conflict, it's important to peek into the past and talk about history. In 1958, the Indian National Congress government under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru gave permission to authorities to draw up new maps of India. During the production phase and publication, they made a grave error.
Grave error indeed. Knowingly that there is no formal agreement between China and India regarding borders, why build claims? Why patrol around disputed parts and feel confident that nothing will happen? Relying on Uncle Sam's and Mr. Bear's help does not pay off well.
In 1959, during the Tibetan uprising, the Indian media under the sponsorship of their government decided to build up negative perception about China and upset the balance of power in the region by ushering in sponsors of Western media to undermine Communist Party of China.
Utter failure, the Tibetan uprising, and just because Indians owed the Tibetans provided support previously, they started providing refuge to the Dalai Lama, and thus the barrage of errors continued.
Talks failed, diplomatic fronts crumbled, and the Cuban Missile Crisis provided an opportunity to Communist Party of China to launch an offensive against the Indians.
We have seen this before throughout history. Calculations, miscalculations. India was mainly depending on Western and Russian support, even after annexation of Goa.
Thus, the 1962 war began after wrongful intrusion by the Indian forces across the McMahon Line and Exai Chand region.
Absolute genius the Chinese did. Completely surprised the Indians, humiliated them, nibbled as much land as possible, and set up a new status quo. And they said a clear-cut message: if you want to talk, now is the time to talk.
After the debacle of 62 and 65 wars, India tried its best to create a strategic balance in the region. In later decades, India set out a policy of appeasing China while loitering and nibbling its own neighbors.
From toppling governments in Maldives, supporting Tamil tigers in Sri Lanka, forming hegemony over Bangladesh, absorbing Sikkim, nibbling Nepal, and supporting insurgents in Pakistan. You name it, India has done it all.
After Indian failure to isolate Pakistan and establish a new status quo in the region via Balakot strikes, India continued with her expansionist designs, now directly threatening China.
3 words: completely gone bonkers. That is what I am going to say about the Indian foreign policy. After their failure in Afghanistan and Pakistan, India went ahead and teased the Chinese dragon, trying to rely on their Western trading partners and established peaceful alliances with Europe and America. But then again, you can't just rely on Uncle Sam all the time.
India, as usual, follows the tunes of RSS leadership, continued to push its neighbors to the verge of conflict. Not only did this create pressure and humiliation for India, today most of the nations believe India is being the epicenter of Islamophobia and reincarnation of Nazism.
Their analysts keep on claiming that just because India has a massive economy, they are untouchable. But look at the world right now. Everybody, from the Arab world to Europe to US, everyone is condemning the atrocities committed by India. Even today, as I speak right now, the Arabs are calling India the epicenter of Islamophobia. Remember, back in the day when Hitler had built up a perception that their economy matters and nothing else matters, basically. Today, India is trying the same policy repeatedly and engaging with the same policies that the Nazi regime repeated in the 30s and 40s. But the world is not that blind.
After the abrogation of Article C-70 and 35A, thus changing the status quo of the disputed area of occupied Kashmir, India has not only provoked Pakistan but also the Chinese dragon.
One can't simply just launch a bravado of nationalism and start biting more than one can chew. At the end of the day, who wants a two-front war?
How is the current situation different than the past? As far as Chinese are concerned, the pressure points selected are where Indians thought nothing would happen. The force applied is unprecedented. It appears to be a well-coordinated move. And the strategic message emanating out of Beijing is that they are not only recovering their claimed area, but actually sitting in Indian occupied Ladakh. On the Indian side, India kept the news hidden for almost 1 month. And on 23rd of May, that is 1 month after the incident, an article by Colonel Ajay Shukla appeared in the Business Standard breaking out the news. Why Moody, Doval and the Indian military command kept quiet? Why Indian Army Chief deceived the Indian public when he said that it was insignificant, not connected, and rather a local affair? $1 million question is the Chinese intent that even the Indians are finding it difficult to understand. There could be a couple of reasons. 1. India joining the Indo-Pacific or the Quad and strategically suffocating China. 2. India changing status quo in occupied Kashmir and including the Xinhua in the new maps. 3. India threatening to attack Gilgit-Baltistan and Azad Kashmir and directly creating a threat to the CPEC, something very close to Chinese heart. And 4. China may have tested Indian nuclear deterrence, especially after they have seen the reaction of Indian military when the PAF Operation Swift Retort re-established the nuclear deterrence. China did test the waters.